What has the state of cinema and entertainment come to these days that the very presence of resurfacing nostalgia and the undying existence of a once seemingly invincible brand of superhero storytelling has become tiresome and exhausting to fucking look at, that now many members of those audiences and fan groups are flocking in droves to head out and support lesser expected titles like Barbie and Oppenheimer, with the collective hype of a fucking Glastonbury festival.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have one of two ways to look at this. We could either accept the win and just make do with what's there, and let's be honest, it's been a lot fucking worse recently. Or we can sit on our high chairs and pretend that Hollywood can do better, when let's be real here, their quality and conditions have become so dire, basically the whole industry is just upped and left.
Grab a napkin, homie. You just got served.
Now, regarding Oppenheimer, it's not a movie that's ever interested me, as I've never been particularly keen on historical movies that delve into a time once lived and tries to show you the perspective of someone who made such a colossal fuck up or created an unforgettable moment in history. And that's not to say they're not fascinating, as I bet they are, they're just not my thing. I prefer a good piece of imagination with my movies, which is exactly why Greta Gerwig's Barbie piqued my interest. A title based on a string of toys dating back over 60 years was not a movie I had on my bingo card, but here we are. And impressively, the promotional campaign left out all the contentious talking points that have turned this into such a divisive movie that has placed many people on either side of a fence, where many are more concerned with how people feel off the back of this to try and justify or explain how they're feeling, that has left such a cloud of confusion around it. So, to throw my 2 cents out here, my feelings are simply put ambivalent.
Alrighty then.
I can see and understand everyone's position on this, from the crushed, emasculated dudes across the globe that feel this was a direct assault upon men and the patriarchy, to the women who despise the very representation of themselves in this that depicts them as absurdly domineering that it makes them look bad. And it leads me to think that the best thing to do with this is to cut it down the middle and assess the good against the bad qualities and try to find a consensus over this, as Barbie left me so perplexed. That is why it's taken so long to come out with my review for this, just to rationalise my own thoughts regarding it. But before I get there though, let me just explain what occurs. Barbie begins with a 2001 Space Odyssey style opening that explains why the very concept of Barbie even exists, as a means of inspiring young girls to break their gender norms of just simply being homemakers and mothers at the time for the chance of being a doctor, scientist, president and whatever else is on display in this movie.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. No, you can't. Yes, I can.
Which we then cut to in this picturesque layout of Barbie Land that presents all the Barbies as something meaningful, with the Kens as their accessories for the pleasure of the Barbies, that do nothing but beat each other off, which sounds exactly like you think, but not what you're thinking of, you dirty bastard.
Wow. Who said it? Get the cameras on them. Put the lights down their faces, creep me out.
Anyway, stereotypical Ken tries to profess his love for Barbie, seemingly like a victim of Stockholm here, claiming to only ever be happy when he's around her. But she repeatedly rebuffs him throughout the film, wishing to pursue autonomy and female friendships instead. And after having the beginnings of an existential crisis, Barbie begins feeling concerns over mortality, and is instructed by Weird Barbie to visit the real world, track down the young girl that's causing her to fall apart, and try to reconnect with them, and does so with Ken sneaking along with her for the ride. As the pair arrive in the real world, they hit a few setbacks that gets the attention of Mattel, who wish to put a stop to this.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
And Barbie tracks down the young girl named Sasha, who has become disgruntled with Barbie for being representative of unrealistic beauty standards for young women.
And fuck you, bitch!
Taken back by this, she runs off and is almost captured by Mattel until Sasha's mother, an employee of Mattel, Gloria, saves her, and the pair realise that Barbie's sudden wave of emotions have come from Gloria playing with the doll, having a crisis of identity of her own. To settle everything that's occurred though, Gloria and Sasha accompany Barbie back to Barbie Land, where Ken has returned with the concept of the patriarchy, following his own experiences in the real world that left him feeling respected and understood. So he brought it back with him, encouraging the other Kens to take a stand with him.
I assure you, brother, the sun will shine on us again.
Upon the girls' arrival, they witness what's transpired, and after getting pushback for asking they revert to how things were, Barbie seems set to give up. But Gloria offers a riveting speech about womanhood that unites all the rejected dolls to snap the Barbies out of their submissive states and lure the Kens into a war against each other. allowing the Barbies to ensure their constitution sticks to allow them the majority rule over Barbie Land, but they agree that the way things became briefly was an eye-opener to how they've been mistreating the outcasts and Kens, so they promise to amend things giving everyone autonomy. And we end on Barbie and Ken apologising to each other, realising their misdoings, with Barbie encouraging Ken to find his own identity so he's not belonging to her, and she gets a little nudge of her own in the right direction thanks to a conversation with the spirit of Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie, who leads her to the decision that she wants to be a real woman and experience all that life has to offer, actualising the very intention of why Barbie was created, to remind young women that they can make their own choices and be whatever they wish, just like this Barbie arriving for her first gynecology appointment.
You serious?
I said in the beginning that this movie leaves me feeling ambivalent, and it still does, as you can see the topics that this is trying to touch on, with gender norms, societal expectations, power hunger, challenge of the patriarchy, and how the value of someone is determined with what they do, how they look, what they represent, how they act, etc. And I think this leads me to believe that the largest flaw with this movie is it tries to do too much within the time it has. It's overwritten and bloated, where Greta Gerwig seems determined to point out and resolve every societal misstep, with a lack of visual storytelling, and doesn't seem to trust the audience to make up their own decisions, where instead it's all thrown in your lap like hot soup and you're just expected to make sense of it, whilst almost being told what to think as well. It's an overload, and quite frankly not a polite one. In all honesty, this movie would have benefited with a more succinct focus on the existential crisis that both Barbie and Ken were experiencing, but rather this had to be a statement with a few messages mixed in that on their own are rather sweet, and some of the scenes reflect that sincerity, but it all gets lost in an ocean of nuanced topics and societal sore points. And the other issues I felt with this was the world logic and convenience of everything, and how ultimately almost a third of this, mainly with the Mattel men, could have been cut entirely, as they didn't offer anything to the plot by the end.
Well, that was pointless.
Other than to bring Gloria and Barbie together in, again, a rather convenient way. The only reason Mattel factored into this, in my opinion at least, was for a moment of shameless self-promotion, a tongue-in-cheek gag that really wasn't as amusing as they might have thought, and to give us a setup of Ruth's involvement with Barbie's self-actualization by the end.
Comedy.
Then lastly, the structure of the movie. I understand that this on paper is a journey of self-discovery for Ken and Barbie, but you wouldn't know based on how jarring everything was presented throughout the second act alone, as it batted back and forth between the pair without ever really settling on a direction, and both their woes battled against each other for attention, and it felt confusing as to whose story this ultimately was, when you factored in Ruth, Mattel, Gloria, Sasha and Alan at the same time.
Alan! Alan! Alan!
There are most likely things that I missed here, but as for what I could establish from one viewing, those were the glaring aspects that destroyed full immersion in this movie for me. But as for the good that this flick offers, the first praise has to go to the world of Barbie Land and the artificiality of it. The set design is fantastic, clearly paying homage to much of Barbie's history, and even involving some of the retired dolls and designs for those eagle-eyed viewers. And this compliment extends to the wardrobe that was certainly tailored to accentuate, things, and honestly the committal to the roles of Barbie and Ken has to be career highlights for both Margot and Ryan. It's bizarre to say, but this was my first experience seeing Ryan Gosling on screen, and actually the dude delivered. He felt engrossed with the character, so much so I honestly thought there was an element of method acting involved preparing for such an undertaking. And as for Margot, she offered little from what she usually does in movies. She was perfectly likeable and understood what was required of this, hitting the comedic timing and expelling concerns that she's only ever fit for the more sexual and explosive roles, delivering an unmistakable charm of a character that was saddled with expectations given the current climate, and it was enhanced with the supporting cast pulling out all of the stops to make this an enjoyable venture that hit with some decent comedic moments, and when the weight was needed they were able to do it. And lastly, this movie actually offered a partial musical with plenty of remixed numbers drawing influence from classic adverts and movie scores, though the licensed music leaves much to be desired for me. And as far as I can tell, this movie is a combination, an act of ambivalence at its best and worst, where it's not exactly bad as there were good moments, but it's far from great as there were shit beats too. I think the idea is that ultimately we're all our own worst enemy when power and self-interest is at play, and everyone has the potential to be better than they were yesterday, and the idea, even if not conveyed clearly, was that there can and should be a balance here, which was written in passing during the closing act, and maybe it might have served better to see some of the change promised as a neat little bow, but generally I think this movie wants to enlighten us to the problems throughout history and within the current day.
Can't be that easy. It's
that easy.
whilst pointing out the good and bad from both. The message of what Barbie has done for women and young girls over the years and how it's connected mothers and daughters across the globe felt earnest and sincere, as one generation wants the next to thrive and succeed, and it all starts from imagining what that could look like. Barbie was designed as essentially a metaphor for a woman's potential, and things aren't as they were when these dolls were introduced. Women everywhere have the potential to become anything they want now, so long as the door is there. So to wrap up, the storytelling is subversive and overfilled, but equally heartfelt, wrapped up in a mix of meta humour and passionate writing. But it's up to you, dear viewer, to formulate your own feelings regarding this one. I can see the ups and downs, and for however ambivalent I may feel towards it, there is potential for you to have a good or a bad time with this. We have to remind ourselves when going into this that this is designed for women. Anyway, I appreciate you stopping by. If you like this, leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more like this down the road, and until next time everyone, take care, and I'll catch you later.